Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to violence.
Welcome to Lost in the Static.
Welcome to another Saturday night. I am Josh Hadley. With me, as always, from the future is Glenn the Criddle.
It is the future, and I can confirm that Donald Trump is still president. Sorry about that.
Damn it. Well, Sarah won't be joining us. She got the dongle to get her computer fixed from the T interface incident, but she had someplace she had to be, so Sarah will be back next time. In the meantime, though, as Glenn pointed out, Donald Trump is among us. So if you want to get some relief from the Trump era, you know, the government's going to butt fuck you. You might as well go to adamandeve.com to get something to help out with that. Use the promo code STATIC and you will get 50% off of a single item, 3 free DVDs, free US shipping, and a free Power O-ring just for using the promo code STATIC at adamandeve.com. Alright, that out of the way. Tonight we're going to talk about the public domain and specifically Manos, the Hands of Fate, what is generally considered the worst film ever made. Strangely enough, unseated Plan 9 years ago. Because there's a weird legal dispute. So we brought in an expert, who I'll bring in a moment, but Manos, the Hands of Fate might be getting pulled out of the public domain. Perhaps. So we brought in Ian Friedman. Ian, can you tell us what is going on here before Glenn and I throw in our 2 cents? Can you give us the real lowdown?
Well, to the extent that I can talk about it, I represent both Jackie Jones, who played Debbie in the original Manos, and also Ben Solvey, who handled the restoration of Manos, the Hands of Fate. Actually, it's kind of an interesting story. I literally got in touch with Ben, 5+ years ago, it must be, asking if he needed help with any but like any contract or release things, and that's sort of how we got started. And part of the problem has always been, the movie is in the public domain. That's always been my opinion. I believe at various times Joe Warren has even said that himself. Recently in an AV Club posting he made, or that someone alleged to be him made. But the issue is that, and we could probably talk about the past layers, the issue is that Joe Warren recently applied for a 1B intent to use trademark in the United States with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. He wants to trademark the term Manos, the Hands of Fate for both films, and it's a pretty broad description he used. Includes even romance and comedies, and also for books, nonfiction and fiction. And the problem is that there's a chance that he would never even get this because he has to show use of it. And there's a rule saying, well, I'll get into that more a little later, but the problem is if he were to get a trademark on the movie, or excuse me, on the title, knowing his previous actions, he would probably try and make people pay him money to use something that A, he doesn't have a right to demand money from, and B, if it actually went to court, he probably would not win.
I'm going to stop you real quick. I thought, and I'm asking you to correct me if I am wrong. Sure. I thought you could not copyright or trademark a title.
Well, no, you cannot. There's something called the single title rule, or single creative work rule. Now, there are obvious exceptions, and I guess the best way to explain it would be Star Wars. Star Wars was not originally trademarked. Once they started making more than one, it was. If you have a series, you can trademark the series title. Like Empire Strikes Back can't be trademarked on its own, but Star Wars can. So when they talk about Star Wars, The Force Awakens, the Star Wars part is trademarked. So you can do that, and it makes sense because once you have a series, clearly you're not just taking one title to try and sort of monopolize it. Though there have been incidents where people were finding ways to try and get a single title trademarked. There are a couple of, I think if you even Google it, there are a couple of law blogs that talk about it, but the truth of the matter is if the trademark office found out you were trying to do that, they would refuse registration. So no, generally a single title, and this is a movie or a book, you can't trademark it.
So what does that mean that he's trying to do here? Is he trying to get around that rule, or is this just sleight of hand?
Well, to the extent, obviously, I can't speak for what his intents are, or, what his thought is, but I do not know. I mean, he claimed, and once again, this is, if you go to the AV clubs, they did an article. Someone claimed to be
I want to stop you real quick.
Oh, sure.
That AV Club article is actually referencing a Playboy article that was done 2 years ago.
Right.
So it was Playboy that actually did all the legwork on this.
Yeah, no, I was interviewed for that one. I think I got a line in it, but, well, no, there's the referencing the Playboy one, but there's a more recent one that came out about a day or two ago, where he's in the comment section. But apparently, I can't say what he's planning to do. He claims that he has projects in development. I don't think that to be the case, or I have no knowledge of them. And obviously, he's going to need to file an actual, what's called an allegation of use to show that he's actually doing something with it. You can't just file an intent to use and then you get it. You have to eventually show it to him. The problem is that when you file the allegation of use, you're already past the stage where outside parties can intervene to oppose. At that point, you're hoping the examining attorney, well, not if you're the one submitting it, but we would be hoping the examining attorney would not grant it. But examining attorneys are human, just like we all are. Just because we're, blessed with the knowledge of Manos does not mean they are.
Well, so what does this mean then? Let's say for the sake of argument, he gets this. What does this mean then for all the Mystery Science Theater DVDs, all of the DVDs that are already out there, all the YouTube videos on it? Would he all of a sudden be able to monopolize all those? Or not monopolize, monetize all those? Or would it just be going forward, if you wanted to use Manos, you would have to pay him?
It would probably be a mix of just mostly going forward, but he would probably try and get from people going beforehand. There are rules regarding sort of trademarks that are registered, but there was somebody in a certain area already using it independently. I guess the best example I can give you is the Coming to America McDonald's thing. Because I seem to recall it's Burger King. There's an area where Burger King can't advertise itself as Burger King because there was a company already there having a common law trademark, not a federally registered one, that existed. So there is some sort of leeway and protection, but it depends on how big you are. For MST3K, and I don't mean to speak for them, or Shout Factory, obviously I don't represent them, they probably would be able to push back, I would assume. Or they might just give him go-away money. I mean, I would suspect, knowing that this is a company that I think Shout Factory cleared the Wonder Years, and they've cleared like a bunch of crazy things that have had horrible rights issues with music and other, sort of problems, would not sort of probably do that. But once again, I can't speak for him.
I don't know. Shout Factory doesn't have the best reputation. They were actually going to try and release Jaws 5 Cruel Jaws on Blu-ray without checking to see that it had stolen footage from 5 different movies, including Jaws. A fan had to point that out to them before they went, oh shit, really?
Well, funny enough, Bruno Mattei films have a history of that. I always wondered if anyone checked for his last 2 movies, because I know the zombie one definitely has footage from The Hunt for Red October. And someone said, if I recall, it's Viggo Mortensen you can see in it. And the funny thing is, not Hunt for October, excuse me, Crimson Tide. And the footage is all squeezed weirdly too. Because God bless Bruno, he was going to keep doing it to the end. So that, I mean, it's one of those weirder films. I could see them not thinking to check. Obviously you always want to check with sort of crazy, movies from certain regions and certain time periods.
If it comes from Italy or Turkey, you have to see what footage was stolen.
Well, yeah, no, I'd say Italy, Turkey, though with Hong Kong it would be music, Philippines footage and music too. I mean, God, I don't know if you guys ever heard Russian Commando?
I don't know if
I
I've
don't
heard
think
of
I have, no.
that one.
There's a scene-for-scene remake of the Mark Lester movie Commando.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But, yeah, I know Shout Factory on the horror end has somewhat of a more mixed reputation than they do in certain other areas, but in terms of, like, clearances for TV shows, other things that they've done over the years. I mean, in general, what I'm trying to say is they're in a different position than, say, someone who wants to put out a Manos the Hands of Fate book or a D20 game. I know there's someone who actually has that in the works coming out. I mean, the problem, he really just wants a trademark on a movie that's been in the public domain for 50 years, has been used by multiple parties, and wouldn't even identify anything to him. It wouldn't, you use the term Manos the Hands of Fate, people think of the movie. They wouldn't think of whatever his product is. So.
Well, I would say also the fact, and yes, Glenn, you will get to talk in a little bit. I would say it's more of the fact that from what I've seen, because he's been, and this is my term, he's been shaking down people on YouTube and DVD companies for the last couple of years, demanding payment for a movie that's in the public domain. And, we know a lot of troll companies do this. But going off of what he said in that Playboy interview, he's just pissed other people are making merchandise and selling DVDs of this and that he's not getting paid. This seems to all come from a place of greed, of him going, no, god damn it, my dad made it, it's mine! I mean, he even brought up the Tolkien kids.
Yeah.
How they just ruthlessly, they don't do anything. They just sit on their dad's work and live off that. That seems to be what he wants to do. He seems to have seen how popular this movie is and says, hey, my dad made that. I should be the one making bank off this. He seems to me like a greedy scumbag.
Well, I obviously couldn't necessarily use those terms, but I have dealt with him doing things like that, and this just it's talked about in Jackie's book, Growing Up, Manos the Hands of Fate, and this happened to Ben too, and it's in the Playboy article, where he demanded, and at the time he's paired with a wonderful person, Phil Francis, $10,000 before when there was going to be a screening of a work in progress of the restoration print at the El Paso Film Festival. And I mean, I can give a personal experience. We were handling things with a third party company. Most people should be able to figure out who it was, that we were giving them an unrestored version for them to use in something. And, normal negotiations. The other company was perfectly fine to deal with. I called up one day and, asked to see what was going on. And they said, oh, we just talked to Phil Francis. He said, actually, I think he was using the name Rupert. I forget which he was using. He said he was representing your client. I was like, what? I'm driving, and I nearly drove off the road because I was just like, excuse me? He's said he was representing my client. So there's a jokey phrase that I have that, my daughter just turned 5 in January. I've been dealing with Joe since before she was born. I think
that makes it sound just so contentious.
Well, here's the funny thing. I've never talked to him. Never directly talked to him. But I guess I can argue that I could consider myself lucky for that. But, yeah, it's just all these things have been going on for a long time, and just, I know Jackie's had to deal with claims from him. Other people have done separate projects, have had issues. And one thing to mention is he's not Hal's only child. I feel that should be mentioned. There's nothing I've ever necessarily felt clearly myself that he's the sole proper representative of the entire Warren estate. Mm-hmm. There are other Warrens out there, and, I am not commenting obviously either way, whether I just never felt satisfied that he speaks for them all or has the representation to speak for them all.
Would I be wrong in guessing he wasn't even born at the time the film was made?
I'm trying to remember.
I think he was.
I don't think he was.
No, so I mean, he wasn't even involved in it in the slightest, as far as I can find out. No. And it has been one of those things where he seems to have taken it upon himself to at least have the artifice of, shall we say, to use this word, protect this property. Although how you're supposed to protect something by hoarding it, I'm not quite sure.
Well, because one of the things is he does not realize how much fans, and the word love is in quotes here, love this film. If he were to successfully take this, and then let's say no one else can use it, Riff Trax has to pay him or whatever it is if they want to do it again, and he tries to put out a Blu-ray or t-shirts, the fans are gonna just revolt against him. They're gonna be like, you know what? Fuck you then. He's not gonna make anything off this. What I think he should do is, since he is the son of Hal Warren, he should say, you know what, I'm going to make an official sequel to it. From the son of the original director, make an official sequel. If he would stop this trademark nonsense and stop bullying people, make an official sequel, start making his own line of t-shirts or maybe Torgo action figures or something, I think people would buy that. But he seems to be on the short game of, they're paying other people, but not me. He seems like a whiny cunt to me.
Well, I can't, like I said, as I've never...
I'm not putting words in your mouth, that's what I say.
No. But, part of the ironic thing is, well, there is a sequel in production, Jackie's been doing that.
Yeah, but it's not from him.
Sequel. But there were more people officially involved with that than whatever he could put out, but it's just, that's the thing. Nothing is trampling his father's work. Nothing prevents him from doing anything now. He can do whatever he wants, and there's no one has a problem with him doing things on his own. I mean, that's one of the nice things about working with something in the public domain. I mean, maybe he didn't like the jokes about his father or something, but I mean, it's not like who was the guy who directed, Hobgoblins? Rick Sloan. I mean, they didn't slag him that bad. So.
No, I mean, the film's had a lot of love over the years, and for whatever reasons, and when I was talking with, this messaging Jackie, just mentioning that there's this kind of weird relationship the fans have with this kind of broken film. There is a love for this thing that is utterly, for most people, trash. And it's always made me kind of wonder, with this whole idea of protecting it, it's like, what exactly is he trying to protect? I mean, it's not like somebody makes a crappy knockoff that it's going to actually defame the original movie, because it's Manos. It kind of did that work itself.
Yeah. No, and the thing is, at various times, Ben wanted to work with him. He did. And tried in good faith to negotiate with him. Nothing came of those, and I didn't feel necessarily that he, or Phil Francis especially, was acting in good faith. And that's the unfortunate part. He could have been a part of this. Mm-hmm. He could have been just the same way Jackie is, and has been. Or also, the son of the sheriff in the movie, Brian Jennings, has been involved in various things. I mean, there was nothing to prevent him. It's not like people are like, stay away.
No, I mean,
that's what the unfortunate part is. I mean, it really does not have to be this way.
No, absolutely not. And I would have had much more respect for him or his position, even if I still didn't agree with it, if he'd actually had been doing something with it before it really sort of blew up in the public consciousness. It just smacks of grabbing at something because it has potential to make a bit of cash. And I haven't really seen any arguments from him, certainly not when it comes to what these projects that he seems to be hinting are in progress and that are at jeopardy if he doesn't have control over the identity of Manos, the Hands of Fate. I can't see anything that is demonstrated that would justify what he's trying to do other than to be trying to make money for this thing. And why isn't he doing that off his own back, to be quite frank?
And truthfully, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. I think the weirdest thing about this is that the movie being in the public domain actually makes it easier for him to do projects with or get investors. I mean, it's like no one's going to be like, oh, Sherlock Holmes, oh, Dracula, whoa, those are in the public domain. No one makes movies about those characters. Frankenstein, no one's going to make a movie about that. It's just sort of, just because something, I do get the idea that understand that some people feel if something's in the public domain, it's sort of like, it's on one of those old DVDs where it'd be like 10 DVDs in a pack.
Yeah.
Everything's compressed to hell, just not worthy of anything. And those things, public domain releases can undercut other releases, say working from original elements. I don't think that's an unfair thing for people to say, but it's not like this was putting out like old VHS transfer of a TV beta tape or something. I mean, the only thing floating around of this before was literally an alpha video release.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's always been people that want to use the public domain and claim that it's their own, like Wade Williams. Wade Williams made his entire fortune by buying this in the pre-VHS era. He would buy film prints of public domain movies. He would add Wade Williams Presents to the beginning, re-copyright those, and then buy up every remaining film print. So if you wanted to see Plan 9 from Outer Space, the only version you were likely to find was the Wade Williams Presents version. So even though the movie is a public domain movie, good luck finding a non-Wade Williams print. He calls himself a film archivist. He was saving these movies from the public domain. To me, Wade Williams is a money-grubbing scumbag, and that's the vibe I get from Joe, that he wants to do the same thing. He wants to say, this belongs to me, because in that Playboy article, he argued the movie should not be public domain, and it never should have been. It should have belonged to his family. Is that him not understanding how the public domain works, or is that just a narrow tunnel vision of my dad made it, so obviously it's mine?
It also it misunderstands the fact that, and Jackie does have this contract, I've seen it, it was to her father, but the master had a piece of the movie, and so did another person. And there were a couple people who had pieces of the movie, to my understanding. And there's a question of, even if this movie wasn't in the public domain, and I'm not saying it isn't, but that the ownership would be split up, and that's not including the Warren family and how the estate works out there. So, based on just contractual agreements and also, estates, the ownership would be rather confused. It's almost like, I'm trying to think, and I know this just came out, and I have no clue how it happened. Sasquatch Legend of Bigfoot, a Code Red put it out. And for years I was told that people said, now Retro Media also put it out, that it was so many people invested in it, you literally would have had to have like 120 people sign off on it because all of them had a piece of it. So I have no clue how the guy from Code Red got that out, or the actual story.
It's sort of the same thing. You remember the 1990 Richard Stanley movie Hardware?
I've heard of, I've never seen it though.
Well, that came out on VHS and Laserdisc and then quietly went away. They eventually, Synapse put it out a few years ago on DVD and Blu-ray. For years, they were trying to, according to Richard Stanley, 18 different companies all claimed ownership of that film. So he said it was a rights nightmare because everyone said, can't put that out, we own it. And then two other people would come and go, no, we own that film. Another company would go, no, we own this film. And it's just, I don't understand this whole rights issues things when you get to that degree. It becomes such a clusterfuck. It's just like, how did you get to this point?
Sometimes things are sold and passed around. There's some things are distribution deals that people think reverted, that didn't revert, that weren't written that way. It's one of the reasons I always advise my clients is you keep a very nice, clean chain of ownership, and in terms of how right revisions work. And sometimes, keep in mind, things are divided by territory, like even U.S. and Canada. People sometimes forget that. Now, hardware wouldn't be an example of this probably, but earlier, I mean, things were actually split between different regions of the United States alone for distribution, how it was handled. I mean,
that's insane.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, the same thing with the public domain. James Bond, the character, is public domain in Canada. So a Canadian company could legally make a James Bond movie, call it a James Bond movie, but they wouldn't be able to release it anywhere except Canada. And I'm pretty sure MGM would probably try to stomp that out too.
Probably because of the use of the, I'm just pretty sure James Bond is trademarked. I'd have to look that up, but
because according to Canadian public domain laws, the first novel, therefore the character, is public domain in Canada only.
Well, there's a question of, and this is sort of interesting, while the first novel's in the public domain, I don't know if the ability to create original stories using that character. You can do everything with the original novel, not to speak too much to Canadian laws, but just the concept of, because the character, I don't think it would be right to say the character's in the public domain. I'd say one of the stories is, and that story allows you stuff, but not the ability necessarily to create new derivative works.
Would that be similar to the Mickey Mouse kind of situation, like Steamboat Willie and that sort of thing? If that was to go in the public domain, you still wouldn't be able to use the Mickey Mouse character, for instance.
I would bet Disney would very much hold that view, and I think it would make sense too. I mean, it's not so much the characters. I mean, with Dracula, mostly Dracula went in because there was only one story. Sherlock Holmes obviously being a little different, but that's pretty much now. There was someone who was kept holding on, claiming that they still had rights because they were married at one time to an heir and they weren't. But the official one was like the last one, when I think most of the profits were always set to go to like a foundation for the blind before it went to the public domain. But I know somebody was screwing out Sherlock Holmes at one point, trying to claim that it was they still had ownership of it.
Well, sometimes this right issue stuff gets so nuts. Like, I recently interviewed Joe Bob Briggs. He produced Drive-In Theater and Monster Vision. He produced all of those for TNT and the Movie Channel. He owns them. He said right on my show, as far as he is concerned, all of those segments, not the movies, but the segments he produced, are public domain, and he doesn't mind if people put them up on YouTube. So as soon as you put them up on YouTube, you've got a dozen different people going, that sound effect he used back there, we own that sound effect, or we own that music clip. And it's like, okay, the man who made these says there's no copyright on them, yet everyone's going, no, but that piece, that's me.
Well, no, I mean, not to be the sort of unfun person, it's sort of funny, since I've been talking about, Manos being public domain, but there are certain times where that would be true, just because, depending on the license for the music, if it was a stock music track and it was licensed for that movie in all use, that would wouldn't be the case. But if it's something that was used meant to be used on a short-term thing, and the ownership never transferred them, there's a valid argument to that.
It's just weird how people can own a part of something and not the rest,
No, well, I guess since I'm coming from the legal background, it's not that weird to me, but I can understand how it can be a bit odd, like, wait, actually, here's a good example. The Batman show from the 60s, that was apparently, everyone owned parts of that or owned something that had to be cleared. Like, there are appearances by guests that weren't credited, and it makes sense, but I can understand why people find it absolutely frustrating and very sort of confusing and sort of obtuse when you're thinking about it initially.
Okay, well,
I think there's a massive problem, really, with the clarity of being able to trace who people, who owns what, apart from to be able to confirm it. I mean, for my part, I would absolutely love it if that was actually something that was worked on to help, people like myself as a content creator on YouTube to actually be able to deal with those kind of issues if there's something I need to use and all that kind of stuff. As it is, I mean, it would take a 6-month research bloody grant and an awful lot of ringing around just to do a 15-minute video on a review of a film. So,
exactly. I want to swing back to Manos, though, real quick. I have a question I want to ask Ian. Let's say Joe gets this trademark. What precedent does that set for the rest of the public domain? Would all of a sudden George Romero and John Russo be able to trademark Night of the Living Dead? Would the Manster or the Ghost Galleon, or would all of a sudden every public domain work all of a sudden be in danger? Would this set a dangerous precedent?
Well, it wouldn't set a good one, but yeah, it could cause those types of problems because once you get one in and once that mark's uncontested, it creates precedent. Now, it could just be said eventually that, no, this trademark was a mistake in the first place, but it absolutely will probably encourage other people to try. And here's the thing, even if it's not granted, this is still causing a tremendous problem already. I mean, just the process that it's occurring is the problem. Because truthfully, I don't see Mr. Warren putting anything out. I could honestly see the trademark application being abandoned because there's no submitting any use. But to tell my clients, well, I don't think he'll do anything with it, we should just chance it on that, would be pretty poor legal advice. And that's the problem, is when people start doing it. Kind of surprised no one's tried trademarking Night of the Living Dead, since there have been a lot of weird things with people trying to do things with that movie. Whether a full remake, shooting new footage so they could copyright the movie as a whole. I mean, that is a thing, and it's a valid strategy, but obviously the only thing that'd be copyrighted are the new scenes. Now, if you wanted to say take that, you'd have to splice everything out, and depending on how the sound's mixed, it could be impossible. But, that is something that has been done. I just see this being a potential problem because it's going to be the smaller people who get squeezed the most, whether directly in terms of being told to pay or being told, or just being too afraid to do it or not being able to get funding. If you knew that there's an issue or some cloud on the ownership of something, even if everyone agrees, yeah, it's not really valid, I mean, do you want to invest money into that?
Well, that's what happened with, do you remember the 1986 Invaders from Mars remake that Toby Hooper made for Canon?
Yeah.
The original Invaders from Mars is public domain. Wade Williams, who I brought up before, he, did that whole Wade Williams Presents thing. The movie is public domain. He convinced Canon that it was not, and that he owned it. And he extorted a ton of money from them because they were already in the process of making the remake of a public domain movie when this shyster came up and said, no, pay me or I sue you into oblivion. And they even added him as an executive producer. That is what I'm afraid is going to happen, that anyone who wants to use anything in the public domain will start just extorting everyone around them. That's what, and I don't know if Joe sees this or not. I don't know if he even cares if he creates, the Wild West with the public domain.
Well, I truthfully could not say whether he thinks it one way or the other, but I do see that as being a problem. And like I said, there have been those issues caused by Joe asserting copyright ownership. Those are documented in the Playboy article and also in the Growing Up with Manos book. I mean, those things have already happened. That's something he already does. I do think that most people sort of just view it as ignore him now, and he's not in a position to force people that he may have been earlier because of better times for him or anything. I can't say one way or the other, but just that he's clearly moved on the trademark because he doesn't feel copyright's working for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's happened on quite a few occasions in the past, though, hasn't it? I think It's a Wonderful Life had a similar, shall we say, sideways approach to taking the film back from the public domain, in that the studio copyrighted bought the rights for the soundtrack and then essentially made the film unusable unless you paid them money. And that's one of the things I personally find quite disturbing about copyright law, is because every property seems to be so modular that there's often, dozens of ways that these things can actually be claimed by somebody in one form or another. And it could be of course, now we're in a global market. Now you're dealing with copyright holders in Spain, in Italy, in China, in Japan, in whatever country happens to hold a copy of that film. So, I mean, how do you think, it would be the way forward when it comes to changing copyright law to make it not just simpler but more
streamlined?
more streamlined and more effective for people to be able to deal with.
Well, I think, see, the problem is public domain isn't necessarily something that's truly, like, set aside in the law. It's sort of the effect of it not following the law. And what people have to remember is the move away was to actually lessen the creation of the public domain. And it wasn't even done in, like, a malicious way. It was mostly because of the fact that, you know, obviously when Romero tells the story, people feel very sympathetic because they didn't put the title card on there. But the idea was that failure to register shouldn't automatically put a movie into the public domain. So there's a balance. I mean, do you want to return back to, and I don't think you could do it because there's the Berne Convention. There's so many treaties that moved away from failure to register as being automatic loss of copyright. I think probably one thing that would be useful is to build in mechanisms that allow people to actively put something in the public domain, or say that, you know, register just as not being something held as copyrighted, that it's free to use. And there are things obviously like Creative Commons, sort of that type of licensing, but I mean something statutory.
Yeah, now, I don't know if this is different because this is in Canada or not, but the comic book Cerberus by Dave Sim, the 300 issue limited series, that's what he called it. He said it's actually written into his will that when he dies, all 300 issues of Cerberus, including the character himself, become public domain because he believes in that. So he says upon his death, you can do anything you want. You can reprint them. You can make a cartoon, whatever. He only wants to be able to use the character in his work while he's alive. And I think that's pretty damn cool, honestly.
Well, I think that is nice of him to do. The only problem is, like I said, statutorily, that doesn't mean anything. Now, obviously, if he's not enforcing it, that's sort of how people are allowed to do stuff. But as much as I don't want to get in defense of sort of the Disney extension of the copyright things, part of the problem is that things have changed. I mean, when you made a movie 50 years ago, it played, there were TV sales, maybe a couple of, like, B-level screenings, and that would be it. Then you had video, and life of the movie became a lot longer in the sense of how you can market it. So, like I said, it's kind of, it's very much a tug of, sort of back and forth, with a tug of war between, you know, going too much, but not going enough. I do, like I said, I do think it would be useful if there were a way for mechanisms to be built in that something could effectively be statutorily recognized, or recognized by statutory means, of not being copyrighted and being permanently available, as opposed to someone not wanting to enforce it, because ignoring any issues with the registration of Cerebit, the comic you were talking about, say his will gets invalidated and an heir decides, like, screw that, I'm keeping it. I mean, he could have said that all that, but if his will, like I said, is invalidated, maybe because it was never formally registered so many times, there's something there, but I mean, really, there's nothing to stop that. So I think if people really want to give something up, there probably should be a mechanism to allow that. The only problem is, much like there are a lot of cases, and we all know this, where things are incorrectly called in the public domain and they're not. So I could also see the problem of people filing things as being in the public domain or giving up the rights to things they don't own. Because there are instances where a distributor legitimately has a movie and someone keeps selling the movie to other people, claiming they have the rights to it. I mean, we all remember that weirdo situation where there were 2 zombie DVDs out from Media Blasters and Blue Underground. I don't think I've ever gotten a good explanation on exactly what happened, except somebody sold the rights to different people, or different people are claiming to have the rights and sold them to 2 different places. I'm not sure if you guys know the answer to that, but I'm just saying that is a situation. Yeah, I just remember that's a situation that can crop up. So, you know, like I said, even it would be great to have people be able to declare something. People might declare things they don't have the right to declare, so it's a tough situation. I think the best thing is that people probably, if they want things to be in the public domain, is to make it clear, but to also make sure that it can enter the public domain truly, in the sense of there's not someone who's like, well, you used their music, but you didn't get their total release from it and rights. Because, I mean, in fairness, that's not really fair to the guy who did the music, who thought he was doing it for something that would be a limited use, and that he would be able to either use the music in something else, or be able to get royalties on. I mean, there's that issue too.
Well, but then there's also the whole fair use thing, which of course is, big
Yeah,
on
no,
YouTube,
that's true.
because I remember maybe it was earlier in 2016, a YouTuber did, and it was a straight up documentary on Stanley Kubrick, and where he showed footage and had deep analysis. It was like a half-hour documentary. And he is currently being sued by Warner Brothers because he used 3 minutes of music from, I think it was Dr. Strangelove, in the movie, and they're saying fair use does not apply. We own this, and it's actually Warner Brothers on behalf of the composer. And I know fair use is that sticky area, but, lots of companies, there are some companies like Warner Brothers tends to give fair use a more wide berth. 20th Century Fox and Paramount say 1 second of our footage and we're suing you. I mean, hell, Universal lost the Lens versus Universal lawsuit, and they are still one of the most draconian on, no, you used footage. I mean, I recently got a takedown from Universal for 30 seconds of footage from Dune in a 40-minute video, and they said that does not qualify as fair use. You used footage from Dune. I explained to them fair use, and they're like, no. And they would not retract their claim, and I got a copyright strike because of that. Universal doesn't seem to have taken the Lens loss as a learning moment, and they took it as, fuck you, doesn't count.
Yeah, that's a fair description, I'd say. And also, one of the things it's not even a lot of them are doing takedowns anymore. What they do is they monetize it. They just remove the monetization from you to them.
Oh, no. In my case, they took it down and hit me with a copyright strike. They wanted it gone.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just saying a lot of times, not in this case, but in other ones, you'll see that that's the trend, that they don't necessarily care if it goes up anymore, as long as they switch the monetization. Now, if they don't do it fast enough, you get most of the monetization because, most videos, they do have lifetime views, obviously, but once it's uploaded, the lion's share seems to come in like the initial few weeks or months.
Generally speaking, yeah. I mean, I've got 80 of those kinds of claims on my own videos.
Yeah,
80.
Well, okay.
Like, wow.
Since we got you here, Glenn and I would like to ask you about Egida, since that they're a thorn in both of our sides. What is your opinion? It doesn't have to be a legal opinion. We're asking Ian, the man, okay? Egida is a Spanish company who owns the Spanish rights to a lot of movies that are public domain in the U.S. And whenever we put up something, they claim it worldwide and they want to monetize it. And even after having explained to them it's public domain, I was told, and I still have the email, the public domain does not apply in Spain. We own it.
Well, you'd probably tell them, fine, block it in Spain or monetize in Spain, but you can in the U.S. Now, keep in mind, it's all subject to the fact that YouTube doesn't have to follow, fair use or any rules with that. I've definitely had some weird things. I actually had from a presentation, I had footage from Turkish Star Wars up, and some German company actually claimed the footage. I told them,
the footage from 20th Century Fox?
I don't know what they were claiming. For all I know, they could have been claiming the Turkish Star Wars footage. I said, I didn't say you guys are on drugs, but I kind of wanted to. I just typed something saying, this was using a presentation when I was in law school. It's fair use. Also, this is a movie that literally is filled with infringement. And nothing ever happened. The claim was released. I think by default. I actually had the Lady Terminator trailer claimed. And I didn't do anything for the longest time because I was like, I don't want to deal with anything, but I was just like, I was like, oh, screw this, and nothing happened. Just went away. Actually, God, when I uploaded my wedding video to a private channel just so my wife could, have a copy that we'd have to bust out a DVD, I got 13 claims on it. All of them disappeared, though. I said this is a wedding video on a private channel. It's not being shared out. But it's funny, there are other videos I have where I used music from something and they got claimed and they monetized it, and I'm just like, well, that's fair. That's their right to do so. Because I didn't necessarily think, well, it's not a great fair use argument. I'm just going to let it slide. But I had a review I did of, I want to say it's Nightmare City. It's horrible. The audio, I did it can't remember how he did it.
The nightmare
just, like,
becomes real.
Yes. It's just painful to listen to just from a sound quality. You don't even hear any sound from the movie. It's just me talking over 9 minutes of the opening of the movie. And that's got claimed by some company. I had the same thing happen I was doing a review of the Bloody Moon DVD.
Mm-hmm.
And I was mostly just showing the menu, I think, because, the movie's full of nudity and among other things, so I couldn't really show that much. And that got claimed. And I was just like, you know what? It's not like these things ever had a tremendous amount of views. So I just...
See, I'm one for it's the principle. I think, for one thing, bots should not be used. It's one thing if it's manually identified. But as soon as... I've had a few videos that I've put up where before the upload is even finished processing, it's still at like 95% processed, I'll get an email that there's a copyright claim. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, you know what? The manual thing doesn't actually help that much either, because Egida did actually copyright strike one of my videos for Cannibal Holocaust. It was one of my early ones, and that only had stills. There was no audio, no video.
No, I've known people who've had that issue just with stills. My take on it is I don't actually mind the automatic one because, now keep in mind this is with the principle of the person entering the footage legitimately owns the rights.
They might not even know it, though. Because, okay, I used to work for a place called Geek Juice Media. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I have my own brand, 1201 Beyond. Now, I gave permission. I have never told YouTube to look for, infringement of the 1201 Beyond logo or any of the stuff that I own. Alex Jowski of Geek Juice uploaded something. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. And he used a clip, which I said he was fine. He got an automatic, copyright notice. I never told YouTube to look for this. Why were they doing this on my behalf when I didn't want them to?
See, that's weird because to the extent of the knowledge I know about the internal workings of the system.
I mean, hell,
usually...
Ian, I got a copyright notice from myself. Because I used to have two separate channels, a 1201 channel and a Josh Hadley channel. I uploaded a 1201 Beyond video and I got an automatic notice that this is infringement of Josh Hadley's channel. And I'm like, what the fuck? It's like, I never authorized you to do this for me.
Yeah, no, that's something new I haven't heard. But part of the problem is, like, there are literally people, and you can find it, they upload the entire movie. And I'm not even saying, like, facetiously, I mean, like, whole movie, it's there.
No, I've seen plenty of that, and I understand that, and I understand, like, say, Universal getting pissed off at, the entire movie of Dune being put up. But using a clip from Dune in a review or a documentary, fuck you, Universal.
Oh, no, I mean more about the nature of the automatic scanning. I mean, that's part of the problem. It's, even I think manually it would still occur too. I mean, obviously when you can sort of, I guess metadata wouldn't exactly be the right term, but identify the particular image, it becomes a lot easier to track it. The problem is just how it's done, and that's sort of, the problem is it's not a governmental thing, and I'm not saying necessarily it should be, that definitely shouldn't be. It's, it's how YouTube runs their own thing, so it's kind of like, it's not a perfect solution, it's not even a great one, but they have to have something, and it's sort of the unfortunate part of it. Now, part of the problem is literally people being assholes on the other end, so to speak.
Oh yeah, just look at what's happening to the Bible Reloaded right now. And that was so bad, even YouTube is on the Bible Reloaded side against, what was the company, it was that one company that made all those religious films in the 70s and 80s. I can't remember off the top of my head what their name was, but even YouTube is like, yeah, they stepped way over a line here.
And see, that's the thing. That's how it's done. It's not done in a clear sort of way. It's examples, opinions about those examples are what shapes the policy back and forth. It's very fluid. That's sort of the thing. I mean, it's unfortunate because on one hand you have someone who say they uploaded something, or better yet, they uploaded music, or not, they didn't upload, they did it, they worked on a soundtrack, they worked on something, and someone uploads and then it gets 400,000 views. And the worst thing is really like, when you see those videos where people like literally frame in like a half of the picture, so the it doesn't get picked up on the scan, and it still gets 400,000 views, and you're just like, the picture literally looks like crap, or the sounds.
I actually just saw that yesterday. I was looking for a Mythbusters clip. The only ones I could find either had the audio all sped up so they sound like chipmunks, or slowed way down. And I was like, I don't know how people can watch this.
I don't know either. I remember I was looking for sample clips on, I think there's this thing on, Vice's channel that it was something that gave like Action Bronson and basically said, watch Ancient Alien episodes. And part of it's hilarious. It just depends. I mean, it's, as a concept, I'm not sure how well it works out for multiple series. Just, or multiple episodes. Because it's literally him and just friends getting really high and watching Ancient Aliens and talking about it. But when I was trying to find a clip, I kept finding, like either a 90-second promo piece or something where it literally was like a business card size. And the rest of it is some floating background. So, I mean, that's part of the problem is like just having to come up with new ways to deal with it. And then people coming up with counter ways to do it. And the quality just being garbage, and it's just sitting there, and I'm always just amazed that people will watch that. I'm just like, I could not imagine sitting through and watching something like that.
Well, see,
beyond like a 30-second clip.
My biggest problem with the YouTube copyright system is the fact that the people who claim ownership, whether they own it or not, are the ones who get to decide whether their claim is still valid. You'll go through the appeal process. No, this company decides their claim is valid. Even if they are complete and total bullshit, they can get your channel taken down. Shouldn't it be, instead of me having to claim I do own this, you should have to show that you do, instead of that I don't? Shouldn't it be that you have to prove you own it? Because, I mean, like, the way the system's up right now, I could go and claim one of Glenn's videos, and he would have to prove I don't own it rather than me have to prove I do. That's a broken system.
Well, that's what Google designed. But I would think in theory they should, well, part of the problem is, now for larger studios, this wouldn't be an issue. The copyright document, you would just present that. But for like things like, Red Lermy or just one of those web shows, they don't formally register anything, so there's always a question of how you can prove ownership when it's something that is copyrighted because, automatic, fixed upon, creation. Mm-hmm. Like, what would you supply originally? Would it just be some affidavit that you created it, or?
Personally,
like
if I was going to, I think if I was going to, I don't know how effective it would be on a legal sort of basis, but, there's certain timestamps and stuff that you can demonstrate, so long as the video is still up, obviously. But, that's not that difficult to circumvent, I guess, if you're particularly determined to, because once you deleted the video, you've deleted most of the information. Then you would have to go through Google to get upload dates and all that kind of stuff.
I think the biggest sticky area, and I am a film archivist, and I'm not trying to monetize it all like Wade Williams is when you find like some old VHS movie. It might still be under copyright, but they're not doing anything with it. There's no DVD release. It's not aired on TV in 25 years, and you upload it and they go, nope, that's ours. And you go, well, are you going to do anything with it? They're like, no, just you take it down. I always find that the strangest. It's like, but you're not doing anything with it.
Well, one thing you have to keep in mind, and I agree, that's the ridiculously frustrating, is that a lot of times, and especially now, that companies are realizing the value of potential things, and they want to sell them as packages. Like the idea of like the sort of individual title being leased out to be put out on this highly specialized niche label or something still happens, but now the idea is you get it streaming, you do a deal with that for sort of video on demand, but you're doing it with hundreds and thousands of titles. And I agree, it's absolutely frustrating because you're like, I want this movie, I want to see this movie, but sometimes it can be a crappy situation where it's like, there could be a dispute over the title, so they can't actually lease it out. But if it looks like they're tolerating it, someone could claim that, hey, you're laying this title out, I want the money from it. Because sometimes people don't release things because they don't want the hassle. And I think that's tying it back into Manos, that could be a potential problem. I mean, that would be one. Like, thankfully, Synapse and Jerry and Don are fantastic guys. I've known them, God, I want to say, back when I was in law school, I did some sort of checking things out for them on the side, like a glorified internship, but tremendously great guys who
Don
worried
May?
about this. Yeah, Don.
Okay,
May,
yeah, I've spoken
Chandler.
to Don a few times. He's a good guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So is Jerry Chandler, the other sort of head of Synapse, and they were always great with Manos because they said, if you're asserting this, then we're behind you. We're going to release it.
Well, because I'm thinking of something like The Wizard of Speed and Time. Disney made the movie with its writer, director, star, editor, composer. It was very much his Citizen Kane. And they released, and then it was released on video. I can't remember what label it was, like Vestron or something. And Disney, Vestron, and a bunch of people claim ownership. So it's never been released on DVD. He outright tells people, bootleg it. I want you to see the movie. Fuck these companies. It's never going to come out because I'm not going to let them have what's my movie. So he tells people right on his website, bootleg this as much as you can. Upload it to YouTube. If it gets taken down, put it right back up. He's like, bootleg this movie. I want you to see it.
See, but then keep in mind, I mean, I know this sounds weird coming from the guy who's talking about the public domain thing of one movie, but I've done work for, movies where they've made it, they're sort of keeping ownership, but at a certain point, I mean, moral right isn't something recognized in this country. It's a European concept in terms of law. Everything here is more business based in it that, you may not like someone doing this and this and that, but if you sign the contract, you got paid for it. It's a valid contract. That's how it is. So.
Well, right. I'm just saying it's kind of cool that he's saying, you're never going to see this legally, so you might as well. It even goes to, I know Shout Factory told the Mystery Science Theater guys after a while, or no, not Shout Factory, Sci-Fi Channel, when they moved to Sci-Fi Channel. Remember how at the end of each episode it said keep circulating the tapes? Yeah, you'll notice that went away when they started working with Universal.
Oh yeah.
Because all of a sudden Universal was like, you can't ask people to bootleg these. Knock it off. Comedy Central didn't seem to have a problem with it, which would have been, who the hell owns
Viacom, I think.
Viacom, yeah. I thought it was Time Warner for a second, but no, they're HBO.
Yeah, and keep in mind, there was this other channel called Ha, and they merged. It was originally the Comedy Channel.
And Ha, yeah, I remember that.
Ha, yeah. Because I remember in the early 90s, there were always cool ads for like, this is a new channel coming, and this and that. I remember the Sci-Fi Channel was just like this countdown of just weird crap.
I actually have the launch of the Sci-Fi Channel on my YouTube channel if you want to see it.
Oh, cool. No, I will have to see it because I remember that, watching that as it happened, even though, I had a tape of Star Wars, so it wasn't like something I needed to see, but it was just, hey, cool, a countdown clock. But, yeah, I think they've always said that Comedy Central really never quite understood them, and just sort of like, since they were in Minnesota, no one really cared. As long as they didn't have problems.
But once they went to with Sci-Fi Channel, which is owned by Universal at the time, all of a sudden then it became completely corporatized. And it was, no, you do not encourage people to bootleg this show.
Well, I think, it was more also that Sci-Fi just had a more hands-on approach. That's why, even though, like, take an example, my wife loves a lot of the host segments from that era, the idea that they had this linear connecting nature was something Sci-Fi said you have to do. And then, of course, they aired them out of order, so none of it made any sense. Though it is kind of neat if you watch the host segments in order. Someone did that where they put all of them together, like each season, like so it flows. There's no movie footage, nothing, just the host segments.
And see, personally, I'm the exact opposite. I liked the movies in the Sci-Fi and the riffing in the Sci-Fi Channel era better, but I hated the host segments more.
For me, it always could go back and forth. Like going back to my wife, she never liked Invention Exchange because she doesn't like prop comedy. I don't necessarily like prop comedy, but I always liked Invention Exchange. I thought a lot of the ideas were funny. Some didn't work, but it's that's one of the nice things about MST3K. There's a lot of things for people, even if they don't like this, they like that, or they didn't like this part, but they like that. I mean, there's such a wide range of, stuff to like or not to like, but there's also a wide range of things to also check out if you didn't like that. I mean, the funniest thing is when I first saw Manos, I had gotten a copy of it. I don't even remember where. It was in college, the MST3K version, because somebody had actually set up a channel. And YouTube had started, but YouTube was like nothing at this point. It was like literally a web address that you'd play in Winamp, and it was just like a 24/7 feed of MST3K episodes.
See, I remember the first time I saw Manos, I can't say this definitively. I seem to, because when I saw it on Mystery Science Theater, the movie was very familiar to me. I want to say I saw it on like some local UHF station at 3 a.m. at some point in the late 70s or early 80s, but I couldn't tell you 100%. But that movie seemed so familiar when that first Mystery Science Theater, when it aired that first night. So I swear I saw that movie before MST3K.
See, that would be the interesting thing, because we found evidence, not we, Ben. I don't want to imply that I was the one doing the research on it, but Ben, he found stuff indicating it was made available for sales, and even in the early 70s or late 60s, it had sort of a fake description given it that made it sort of sound like it was Manson family related. But there was never any evidence that it aired anywhere or got released or, like, sold. It was offered, but it was never sold or aired on TV, excuse me.
Well, and like I said, I can't definitively say it. It just, there were certain movies when Mystery Science Theater showed them, I went, okay, I've seen this. I remember that scene or that part. I distinctly remembered the Master's costume as, I've seen that before. And this was the night that Mystery Science Theater aired, so I'm like, I know I've seen that image before.
No, that's entirely possible. That would be neat if we could actually establish that could be established. But the funny thing was, when I first saw it, my wife, she was like, "Oh, you have to," I mean, we're dating at the time. She's like, "You have to see this. It's really funny." And I was just like, I fell asleep 2 times watching it because the first times getting through was just brutal for me. I mean, the jokes are actually great. It has a lot of good writing in it. For me, though, my favorite, and this is because I always love Godzilla movies, is going to be the Megalon episode, which I think literally has the best jokes probably of, well, maybe Egaz up there too, but it's like...
No, I don't know. I'm going to fight you on this. It's either Space Mutiny or Pod People.
Gamma for me.
Pod People's got a lot of good stuff. Space Mutiny has a lot of funny stuff to it. It's funny. I actually got a chance to talk to Red Brown once because of that.
Oh, I've been trying to get an interview with him for years.
I can explain what happened. I actually contacted that weird new Sun film that he was associated with. It bounced back, but I emailed everyone at the company.
Yeah, I got a cease and desist from them for doing that same thing.
Well, I just got it was a polite thing. He actually called me. I got to talk to him. We were going to set up an interview. Actually, it was funny. He was telling his dogs to quiet down in the background. I kept expecting him to start, Red Brown scream, but, it's nice, polite. I did hear his wife in the background. I think the problem was that, I was just going to have like 2 other people with me. We were going to interview him via phone, but we did, I didn't have any financial recompensation to offer. And I think he said he wasn't sure if he could do it because they were doing I believe it was this Screen Actors Guild strike or some strike. It didn't make much sense to me, but, he was polite, nice, I can't complain. It's just, I think we weren't really bringing anything to the table to talk to him, but going back to the episode, for me, Megalon, there's something better about that than Manos in a way, because I think, it's a fun Godzilla movie. It's not exactly a slow movie, and I think that was part of the issue with, Manos, but it also could have been the problem that I was trying to watch it at 1 a.m. So, I mean, Manos took me a while to sort of, I don't know if fall in love would be the correct term, but enjoy the episode.
Well, speaking of Manos, we got to wrap up. So what are your final thoughts on this whole Manos case? Where do you think this is going to go? And when will we know something? When is Joe's application scheduled, or when is the defense? What kind of time frame are we looking at here?
Well, what's happening now is I'm working on the letter of protest, which is a step. It's sort of like an unofficial thing before you do the notice of opposition. And my hope is that with this is you send a letter to the trademark commissioner. If they approve the protest in the letter, they forward the evidence you submit, not the letter, to the examining attorney with the instruction sort of to look at this evidence and check your judgment, see if there's an issue. That's going to occur before the publication because letter of protests have a higher chance of being sort of granted before publication occurs, and after publication occurs, they can just reject it for timeliness. Hoping that something can come out of that, but it's usually something done for things where there's a likelihood of confusion with another trademark or the mark is generic. We're coming in there where neither of my clients own a trademark because, you can't trademark Manos the Hands of Fate. That's what I've always felt. After that, once publication begins, which I want to say is scheduled for February 28th, there are 30 days you have to file a notice of opposition or an extension for a notice to file an opposition. Even just to request the extension at the beginning, filing fees, and this doesn't count any of the time or any of the stuff I'm doing, is $200. For the notice of opposition itself, the filing fees are $800.
Ouch.
Because it's $400 per class. And, that doesn't include, actually drafting, gathering the evidence, researching case law. It's a lot. So we're hoping, we'll get the 90-day extension. I would love for the letter of protest to take care of it at all. I also hope that depending on how the way the proceedings play out, that Joe may just not participate and just sort of withdraw or allow it to be abandoned. But, the thing is, I can't say these things will necessarily happen. That's one of the reasons my clients have set up a GoFundMe to to fund the legal activities. And, I'm sure one of you guys could insert the link to it, in the description or something like that. But,
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thanks. It's just that it's a very crunch time budget to get all this stuff done and for it to work. I do think, I'm hopeful that we will prevail because I don't regard this as a very good claim. But part of it is it was set in as a 1B, intent to use versus actual use. And the rules say, for an intent to use, you generally shouldn't refuse it based on it being a single title of a creative work. It doesn't say that you should never do it, just that generally it shouldn't happen. So, but we're hoping when it comes, the evidence submitted that, hey, look, there was a movie, this is all everything refers to, is this movie that's in the public domain 50 years ago. There's other works coming out of it. I would say it's not really generic, but in the sense that there was nothing that he's planning to use that would stick out from it, that would define it as something different. So, it's going to be interesting to see what the results are, but, I am hopeful that, I definitely think my clients are in the right, but, as obvious with all things legal, things can go one way, they can go another, but I don't feel the evidence really supports Joe. And I'm just happy, this thing was noticed before it went even further. I mean, not for, checking in on these things every now and then. We could have already gotten to the point where it was already published.
Did he try to slip this under the rug?
No, and not in the sense of he didn't tell anyone about it. Well, except that it was noticed that something he said, I haven't seen the exact thing, but something indicated it to either Jackie or Ben that something was going on. And Jackie had mentioned it to me earlier, and that's when I was thinking originally there's a good chance when it was first submitted, I knew about it within a couple of days after. But, knowing how trademark things go from doing a bunch, professionally, that, it's going to be a while before an examiner gets it. And we didn't want to say anything because my honest to God hope was at that point, well, they're going to see it's a single title. They're going to reject it. But I guess the person, they only at that stage really check to see if there's another trademark that conflicts with it.
Okay.
Until I guess if there was an actual use, if it was something he was claiming for an actual use, it would have possibly been taken care of. But, once it got to that point when I saw that it was approved for publication, I, called both my clients. We talked about this, like, we have to do something. There's a chance that he may never do anything and nothing will happen, but that's a hell of a risk to take.
Agreed.
And, it's unfortunate.
Agreed. So if people do want to contact you, Ian, obviously we'll put the GoFundMe link and all that in the description here, but is there a way people can contact you if they either want to just give you moral support or ask you a question about this before they donate? Is there an email address you want to give out?
Yeah, let me just give out my regular professional one. It's Ian, I-A-N, at IANFRIEDMANLAW.com. So Ian at IanFriedmanLaw.com.
Okay. And then...
I'll put that in the description for you.
Yeah.
Sure. And if people have any questions, other general ones are also more than welcome to ask her if they'd like to have any, work done themselves, that's perfectly fine too.
Well, and then Glenn, where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me at YouTube as LampyMan101, a Grindhouse channel, and basically all over the place. Frankly, Green Bay, I'll put that one in there as well.
And you can find me at 1201beyond.com. You can contact this show at 1201beyond@gmail.com. Guys, we cannot let Manos slip out of the public domain. Okay, we have to fight this. Keep one foot in the gutter, one fist in the gold. Have a good night.
Lost in the Static is a 1201 Beyond production. Find it and other great content at 1201beyond.com.